Hello, everyone, and welcome to this presentation brought to you by the Association for Career and Technical Education, ACTE, CAST, and Skills Commons. We're so glad that you're joining us for this presentation. My name is Luis Perez. I'm a Technical Assistant Specialist at CAST, and we have a great group with us today. I want to introduce each of them to you. So first off, we have Amanda Bastoni. So Amanda, can you say a little bit about yourself?
Yes, hi, welcome everyone. I'm really excited to be here as well. I am a former CTE teacher in the state of New Hampshire, also a former CTE director. Now I work for CAST and I am extremely interested in making sure all students have pathways to quality education and we remove barriers so all students can be successful. Thank you.
And next we have Sam Johnson, who's Director of Post-Secondary and Workforce Development at CAST. So Sam, say hello.
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here with you. Looking forward to talking about OERs, UDL, and accessibility, three things I've had a chance to work in, including with Skills Commons, with the Department of Labor TACT grants, which many CTE centers at the post-secondary level have leveraged.
And then we also have with us Rick Lemedieu from the Associate Director of Skills Commons. So Rick, can you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. Yeah, it's great to be here as well and to share the great resources in the world's largest workforce OER repository in the world. And I'm just really looking forward to, just sharing all the great resources that are free for you to reuse and redistribute for free, totally for free. And so we're just really looking forward to today and sharing all these great resources with you.
Great. And as I said, my name is Luis Perez. I'm a Technical Assistant Specialist. I work for the AEM Center. I have a background in educational technology, mobile learning, universal design for learning. So anything that has to do with making learning environments more inclusive for everyone. And I come to this from a first-person perspective. I'm a person with a disability myself, so I realize the power of accessibility, and so I'm happy to share that with you this morning and share the work of the National AEM Center where I work. So before we get into the content of the webinar, we just want to give you a quick introduction to each of our projects, just so that you have some background and context for the work that we do. So Amanda, can you tell us a little bit about CAST?
Yes, thank you so much. So CAST is an educational nonprofit organization based in Boston, but we do work across the country. CAST really has three prongs. We think about how we design and develop technology. We think about how we study and apply research, and then we think about professional learning, all through the lens of universal design for learning, UDL. And we'll talk more about UDL in a little bit. And CAST created UDL, and we've really used that as our lever for change for the past 30 years.
And within CAST, there are a number of research and development centers, and the AEM Center is one of those. That's who I work for. The AEM Center is a federally funded technical assistance center. We're funded by the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Special Education Programs. And our mission is to provide expert technical assistance that leads to an increase in both the availability and the use of high quality accessible materials and technologies. And we work across the lifespan, starting in early childhood, all the way into career development and the workforce. Originally, the AEM Center was really focused on K-12, but over the years, our mission has expanded. And so now we work with a range of stakeholders, from early childhood programs to states and districts, to institutes of higher education, workforce development agencies, publishers and developments, and parent centers. So quite a range of different stakeholders that we work with. And again, it's to create accessible materials and technologies that benefit all learners. And then finally, Rick, could you give us an overview of Skills Commons?
Yes, so Skills Commons was developed in partnership under the Department of Labor's $1.9 billion TACT program under the previous administration. TACT stands for the Trade Adjustment Assistance Career Community College and Career Training Program. So I kind of mumbled that up there a little bit, but TACT for short. And over 700 community colleges across the country over 4 years developed open educational resources, and they many of them developed complete programs, even full courses that are housed within the Skills Commons repository, digital repository. We have over 16,000 submissions, resulting in about 65,000 individual files. So it's quite a bit of content, and over the last 4 or 5 years, we've had 2 million, over almost 2.5 million downloads across the globe, primarily here in the United States, though. And so our job today is to give you a peek into the resources in Skills Commons, and to just make this great resource known to you around the different industry sectors that you can search for content related to workforce development. So no further on that, and we'll get in a little bit deeper onto that when we get to this section of the presentation. So back to you, Lewis.
Great, thanks so much, Rick. So we want to begin by just going over the goals of the session today. This is a really important universal design for learning principle, which is always begin with a goal and what our aims are for today. So we have 4 questions that we want to answer today. What are open educational resources, or OERs? So if you're completely new to OERs, you'll get a definition that will provide some of the background knowledge that you'll need to make sense of the rest of the content that we're going to discuss. Then what does it mean for OER to be accessible? And then how can accessible OERs contribute to equity in CTE? And that's really the big question that we're trying to answer today, equity. How do we make learning environments more equitable for everyone? And finally, we're going to look at how can we use Skills Commons to help CTE educators plan lessons that are accessible, relevant, and engaging for all learners. And those are all big components of universal design for learning, making things relevant, making them more engaging, and then obviously making them more accessible so that everyone can take benefit of them. So let's go ahead and begin with just a quick overview of OERs, or open educational resources. We'll look at a definition, and then we'll look at OERs in the context of a number of national initiatives. So open educational resources are teaching, learning, and research resources that reside in the public domain or that have been released under a license that permits their free use, reuse, modification, and sharing with others. And this definition comes to us from the 2017 National Educational Technology Plan. With OERs, you are free to retain, reuse, revise, remix, or redistribute. So those are known as the 5 R's. And the way that you're able to do that with OERs depends on the license. And that license can be anything from share alike to non-commercial to no derivatives. And those licenses exist on a continuum. So one end of the continuum that is the most permissive, you have attribution. So you just have to attribute the work to the person who created it. And it's good digital citizenship to do that. And so that's the attribution by license. And then at the other end, most restrictive, you have the no derivative works license. And basically you allow other people to use the work, but they have to use it as it is. They're not allowed to change it in any way. And so that's why it's the most restrictive. And in fact, some people would argue that at that end of the spectrum, you're not really sharing a fully open resource because you're locking some aspects of those 5 R's. You're allowing them to reuse it, but you're not allowing them to remix it into something new that's more adaptable to their current environment. And a lot of people already use OERs even without knowing it, because the concept of open source has been around for a couple of decades now, maybe even longer, in the world of software development. And so a lot of people use web pages that are being served by computers that are running open source software like Linux. But in the world of education, we're most familiar with OER in the context of open textbooks, open lessons and course materials. So these are resources that can be reshared, remixed to create curriculum that's open. And then there are open resources in terms of videos and games and simulations. And it could even be a primary source or a data set that you're reviewing to then create another work that builds on that existing content to create something new for learning. So in terms of the appeal of OER, according to Bureau of Labor Statistics, there's been an 88% increase in the cost of textbooks. And this was for a 10-year period of 2006 to 2016. And they found that on average, college students were spending about $1,200 a year on learning materials. So this makes OERs really attractive in terms of making materials more affordable and discoverable. And a lot of times when we hear the word accessibility thrown around, this is what many proponents of OER mean by accessible. And that just basically means that the materials are available to individuals who need them. But we want to go further. It's not enough for materials to just be available. They need to be usable. And so there has to be that equity of use as well. Another advantage of OERs is that they're adaptable and customizable. So you can use OERs such as videos or simulations to provide multiple representations of the content. And this is really important for universal design for learning, which we're going to look at in just a sec. And so by providing this ability to reuse and remix, you provide a lot of flexibility so that you can align the content to your state or local standards if the national standards are not appropriate. So you have a lot of flexibility for adapting materials into new curriculum. And also the last thing that I want to mention here is that OER sometimes are easier to update as industry standards and processes change. So again, the word here is flexibility. It gives you a lot of flexibility and adaptability. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sam, who is going to give us a quick overview of universal design for learning.
Thank you, Luis. So we want to talk about the importance of universal design for learning in ensuring that OERs are usable by all the groups of students, be they in K-12 or higher education or in a workforce training program, that want to access these affordable textbooks, affordable materials. And universal design for learning is a really key part of making that possible. Universal design for learning really comes out of the world of universal design and architecture. And that really is an approach that's focused on designing for the widest range of users possible proactively and from the outset, as opposed to thinking about certain users and how they would navigate through a space after the fact, and then creating retrofits or solutions that weren't thought about from the outset. So universal design for learning is really applying that idea of designing better proactively for all from the beginning, but applying that to learning environments. So in this slide, you have two different images that really represent, on the one hand, universal design, and on the other hand, really a retrofit approach to thinking about differences that occur in our built environment. So on the left, you have a picture, and actually an open education resource called Ramp and Can. And what it shows is the ramp, secondary entrance into a building that's not particularly attractive, that has a can that presumably that can is used for putting out cigarette butts. So if you happen to be someone who's in a wheelchair and also has asthma, really this entrance into the building is not available to you at all in any kind of safe way. And it really conveys to the user of that building, well, we haven't really considered you. You're invited in, but you're less important than someone else who's going to walk through the main door or walk through a really attractive secondary entrance. On the right-hand side, what you have is an image from the Auckland Design Manual, which really exemplifies universal design. And this actually is also a secondary entrance into a building, but it's really thought about all users from the outset. So for example, the entrance is level to the street. And so anybody can use it. The doors are sliding wide doors that if someone was maneuvering, say, a wheelchair or pushing a double stroller, they would be able to get into those doors easily. They slide open automatically. So there's not a special button that you have to press should you need automatically opening doors. The signage is very clear right on the, as you're entering, it lets you know where you're entering from and where you're going. And there's a very visible information desk as you go in. So as you get into the building, you're able to quickly find someone who can give you some help as to where you're going and point you in the right direction. And that really gives any user a very different idea of what it's like to go into this building. It really says, you're welcome here. This building is for you, whether you're in a wheelchair or pushing a stroller or using your legs to get into the building. And that's really about proactively designing for the differences that occur in any built environment and in any learning environment. So universal design for learning is really taking that idea of designing proactively for all learners and applying that to our learning environments. So our curriculums, if you think of the goals, the materials, the technologies, the teaching methods, and the assessments we use, those are the things that really make up the bread and butter of our learning environments. And we want to proactively design in such a way that those things can be used by all our learners, not just some. And so what we do with UDL is we really apply this idea of designing for all into what we know about how human brains learn and the differences from one brain to another, but also from, one person's brain in a context where they have a lot of background information to another where they don't. That brain really interacts with that environment very differently. And broadly, UDL is based on three principles drawn from the science of how humans learn and the differences from one learner to the next. So the first thing we do, the first principle, is that we really provide multiple means of engagement. So we look to engage learners in different ways in our materials, in our teaching methods, in our goals. And we do that because affectively, the affective part of our brain, that drives the why of learning, is different from one learner to the next. People are motivated in different ways. They're interested by different things. And if we don't have the why they should pay attention in the first place, they're not going to focus their attention on what it is we're trying to get them to do. So we really provide multiple means of engagement. And then we provide multiple means of representation. And this really speaks to our recognition network, how we recognize and interpret information that's coming in, whether that information is coming in via a YouTube video, or whether that information is coming in a text document. If that information is represented in only one way, then only some users can use it. So for example, with a video, if it's not captioned and or transcribed, then people who can't hear that information can't access that information. That representation is ineffective for the ways in which they recognize information. And so finally, what we want to do is really provide multiple means of action and expression. And that really relates to our strategic networks, what we do with information once we have it, how we turn that into actions, hands-on learning, completing an assessment, demonstrating mastery over something, how we go from having an intention to carrying that intention out to show that we know how to do something, that we've learned something. And what we need to do is really provide multiple means of action and expression so that people who act on information in different ways are able to do that. So imagine a learner who had something like a repetitive strain injury in their hand. If the only way to demonstrate that they understood the supply chain was to drag and drop information in an online assessment into the right order, we wouldn't get much information about how they understood the supply chain. We get a lot of information about their capacity to drag and drop, which is not what we want. So we need to provide multiple means of action and expression, how people act on information and how they express what they know. And the UDL guidelines, which are linked here, udlguidelines.cas.org, are really a collection of many, many years of research and peer-reviewed research that really allows us to operationalize these three principles of multiple means of engagement, multiple means of representation, and multiple means of action and expression, and apply them to whatever learning environment we're thinking about. So in this case, open education resources, and to make those work in practice. So UDL, because it is really an evidence-based approach to designing learning environments for all learners, is included in almost all the federal legislation that governs and funds education. And most recently, it's included in Perkins 5, as an allowable use of state and local funds for training for CTE instructors, working with English language learners and individuals with disabilities. So it's a way of, you can spend Perkins money at both the local and state level on training educators so that they understand how to better serve all students. OER and Perkins tie together also in very important ways. So the OER provisions in Perkins appear under Title I, and they're really focused on making all forms of instructional content widely available, which may include the use of open education resources. And this is permitted as an allowable use of funds under state leadership activities and local uses of funds as well. And now I'll turn it back over to Amanda to take us into how can OERs support equity in CTE.
Thank you so much, both Luis and Sam, for those great explanations. So as a former CTE educator and CTE teacher, I'd like to talk with us about how CTE is already a lever for change, and then how OERs can really support special populations and make sure that we are using CTE or creating environments where all students can be successful in CTE. So yeah, the good news is CTE improves high school graduation rates and better equips students, especially our special population students, for high wage, high skilled careers. So, you know, the idea is that CTE is naturally a lever of change that increases equity and learning outcomes. So I think it's important to celebrate that. In fact, research from Florida and Kentucky and Indiana found that earning a credential in high school increases a student's likelihood of completing high school, and earning a credential is one of the essential components for a high quality CTE program. So CTE is a lever for change naturally. I wanted to share this quote with everyone because I think it's important as we all, you know, reflect on the COVID-19 experience, as we reflect and try to change and grow with all the issues that are being brought about in the world today. State guidance, state CTE guidance around equity really calls for us to be bold. It's really important for us to think about meeting the needs of marginalized students, because by meeting the needs of these students, we are actually, as Sam said in her example of UDL, we are actually designing better programs for everyone. So I just wanted everyone to read this quote, take some time with it, and the big takeaway from it is we need to dare and be bold, and we need to think about solutions that are outside the box. Okay, so there still remain some challenges, however, in CTE so that we can make sure all students have equitable access to the lever for change that CTE is. Because CTE is so often considered an elective in schools, there's often a lack of guidance for students around how to enroll in the classes or which classes they should be taking. There are prerequisites for CTE programs that can become a barrier, and then there can be some real challenges in the selection process. All of this means that there are some specific subgroups that are really being left out of CTE in a very problematic way if we want CTE to be that lever of change that we know it can be. Just reminding everyone that, you know, participation in CTE has shown to increase students' GPAs and even increase their scores on standardized tests. So we really want to create access to CTE and remove barriers for students. Specifically, we want to make sure that we're not leaving out our low-income youth, our out-of-school youth, our English learners, our out-of-workforce individuals, and our students with disabilities. So how can we do this? Well, if we can really support our special populations by effectively using open educational resources. And Luis talked about it earlier, and Sam through UDL, and then Luis hit on this idea that not just offering, you know, an unlimited amount of resources, but really thinking about how we use those resources purposefully and taking that deep dive into access. So the idea is professional development around OERs could really assist staff, and faculty educators, many of whom still remain unaware of OERs. And yet when they find out about them, they're very satisfied. So this remains an untapped potential within OERs, and training and evaluation of these OERs using accessibility frameworks and UDL frameworks is very essential. Lastly, I just wanted to draw your attention to some CTE, some ways OERs are currently being used in CTE. Nebraska currently has a portal for open educational resources for all of their educators. It's a very robust portal. It's been around for a long time. Deep dive into pedagogy, how to teach, really excellent resource. Wyoming has a more recently established an OER called Open Range, and there are certain collections. There is a collection for CTE educators. And then New Hampshire took on an interesting approach to creating an OER portal, and I'm sure we'll hear about it a little bit later in the presentation because they partnered with Skills Commons. But New Hampshire, this portal was really created through industry. So an industry sector partner created the portal and then reissued it or offered it back to educators. So there are some open educational resource portals that have been created, and we just wanted to draw your attention to those. And now back to you, Luis.
Thanks so much, Amanda. And so we've covered a couple of big concepts for you this morning. What is OER, and then what is UDL? So the third big concept that we want to focus on is what is accessibility, because there are some misconceptions about it out there. As I mentioned, one of them is that access is often mentioned in the context of availability. So if we make the materials available and often in a digital format, that then everyone can make use of them. In fact, that's not the case. We need to take an extra step of making sure that they're also accessible in the sense that everyone can use them. So I want to share with you a definition that we use at the National Center on Accessible Educational Materials, or the AEM Center. And this definition comes to us from the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights. And from this definition, accessibility is when a person with a disability can do three things. They can acquire the same information, they can engage in the same interactions, and they can enjoy the same services as a person without a disability. And they can do that in an equally effective, equally integrated manner, and with substantially equivalent ease of use. So I want to point out this definition is a functional definition. So it doesn't really put people into categories. So it doesn't rely on categories of different disability groups. It really focuses on what every student should be able to do. And you may notice that those three things, acquiring the same information, engaging in the same interactions, and enjoying the same services, has some parallels with the Universal Design for Learning framework and those multiple means that we want to make sure that we provide. So there is a definite alignment between accessibility and universal design for learning, and we're going to explore that a little bit further later in this presentation. And when we think about accessibility, so again, that's not just making the materials, whether they're OER or any other types of materials, available to learners. We want to make sure that they're usable and that they're interoperable. And by interoperable, we mean that the materials and the technologies work together. The materials is the information or the content that we're focusing on. And we need to make sure that that information or content is designed in a way that again, works across the widest range of learner variability, regardless of the format, whether it's in text or as images or in a video or a podcast. It should be designed according to some accessibility best practices so that everyone can make use of it to support their learning. And then it's not enough to just focus on the accessibility of the materials. We also need to make sure that the delivery system or the tools that are used to interact with that material is also accessible, and that it can be used by people both with and without disabilities. And so we want to make sure that the technologies can either be used directly without assistive technology, or that it can be made usable with assistive technology. So in other words, that it's compatible with assistive technology. So our learners may be using technologies such as screen readers, or that's technology that allows someone who's blind to listen to the content using text-to-speech, or they maybe just be using text-to-speech to support understanding and to support the decoding of the information. So we want to make sure that there's broad compatibility between the materials and the technologies, and that they're working in harmony to support accessibility or equity of use. So how do we do this? So there is a set of standards for accessibility. They're called the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. And this is an international standard for accessibility that then gets translated into national laws. And in the United States, that law is Section 508 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973. So the web accessibility standards get updated every once in a while because technology changes. And so right now they're at this 2.1 release of those standards. But they'll continue to evolve as technology evolves over the next few years. Now, these standards are very technical. However, we at the AEM Center distill them into a set of 4 core principles that are the foundation of the standards. And they are summarized in an acronym called POUR, P-O-U-R. And that stands for perceivable, operable, understandable, and robust. So by making things perceivable, it basically means that we're not relying on one sense to provide the information, so that you can access it in a variety of different ways. If there's an image, there's also a text representation so that you can listen to it read out loud. If there's a video, then there are captions so that you can follow along even if the audio doesn't work or if you are not able to hear the audio. By operable, we mean that you're able to interact with the content with a variety of different technologies. So not just using the mouse, but also using the keyboard or using speech commands, which are becoming much more popular these days. By understandable, we mean that the information is presented in a way that is intuitive, easy to learn, and predictable with predictable navigation. And then by robust, what we mean is that the information can be used across a variety of different platforms, including computers, mobile devices such as smartphones and tablets, and whatever new technologies are developed in the future. And we also want to make sure, again, that there's that compatibility with assistive technology. And so on the screen, we have a range of different devices. We have mobile devices, we have a computer, and we have the information displayed in a variety of different formats, including Braille, including a video with captions, and then a variety of different ways that learners can interact with it, including the mouse, the keyboard, or even their voice. So where can you learn more? You can go to the AEM Center website. It's at aem.cas.org, and we have an entire section on designing for accessibility with POUR, where we take each of these core concepts of the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines and then do a deeper dive into specific techniques that you can implement in order to make your documents, your presentations, any content that you create more accessible for all learners. In terms of accessibility of OER, more recently, we have collaborated with the Go Open community. This is an initiative from the Office of Educational Technology to co-develop a protocol for the curation of accessible OER. So curation is where we're remixing a number of OER resources into something new that can support learning. Another resource that we've developed working with our partners in the Go Open accessibility community is a protocol for the curation of accessible OER. So again, this protocol takes the POUR principles and the Web Content Guidelines, accessibility guidelines, and it puts them into a practical context where techniques for evaluating the accessibility of a number of different OER formats is demonstrated with step-by-step directions. And this protocol has been inspired by the School Librarian OER Curation Framework that was created by ISKME, which is a CAS partner as well. So ISKME stands for the Institute for the Study of Knowledge Management and Education, and they manage the OER Commons repository, which is a large repository of OERs that is it's in common use in K-12 education. And so as part of their curation framework that they've created, there is an accessibility checklist that appears on page 27 of that curation framework. But we felt that it needed more information on how to actually check or evaluate the accessibility of OERs, not just checking the boxes on a checklist, but also conducting a thorough review to make sure that the materials are actually useful for everyone. And so I want to finish this section here with this quote that actually comes from the UDL guidelines, from their introduction. Because we've talked about accessibility, but accessibility is just one component of universal design for learning. That's another confusion that we often see out in the field, is that they equate accessibility with universal design for learning. When in fact, accessibility is just one component, it's the foundation of universal design for learning, but there is much more to UDL than just accessibility, because the goal of UDL is to create expert learners and to make that possible for everyone. So the quote is that the purpose of education is not to make information accessible, but rather to teach learners how to transform accessible information into usable knowledge. So UDL goes further than just making the content accessible. It goes into providing supports and scaffolds that allow every learner to realize their full potential as expert learners. And with that overview of these big three concepts, OERs, universal design for learning, and accessibility, now let's take a look at some of the resources that are available in Skills Commons to support you in the CTE field. And I'm going to turn it over to Rick to do that.
Thanks, Louis. I'm going to head share my screen, and I'll take you to the Skills Commons repository here real quick and share with you that. Just to let you know that the $1.9 billion that was distributed to the 700 community colleges across the country, the primary areas where it focused on, the money anyways, over 50% of the money was put into manufacturing, and then next was healthcare, and then IT, and then some other areas like woodworking, construction, transportation, things along those lines. So this is the homepage of Skills Commons. It's a little bit different than the screenshot on your slideshow, but we just recently updated this. So when you come onto Skills Commons, you can, obviously you can just come in here and you can just start typing words in here and do a search. You can also search by industry sector. You can search by credentials. So if you're looking for associate's degrees or certificates, that sort of thing. If you're looking for different types of material, for example, you might be looking for lecture content, maybe a video, teaching video, or a full online course, or just a module. You can do that as well. And we also have an advanced search feature as well that's really neat. But just coming down through the homepage, obviously in response to the COVID-19, we've put together some materials as well to just for people to get quick access to if they need anything like that. And then here we have the showcases and other areas here around getting connected. And if folks want to actually contribute materials post the tech program. So we're starting to get folks uploading their content that have OER and need a place to have it hosted. This here is the wheel of industry codes. So if you wanted to just come in here rather than use the search window up above, you can just hit this wheel and it'll open up in a new window. Eventually, here we go. And so you can kind of just go around here, like for example, as I was saying, manufacturing. Again, these are by the NAICS code. So in the parentheses, you'll see 3,854. That means that's the number of submissions in this area. And then you can refine your search. You go looking down for welding, fabricated metal, that sort of thing. And you can just continue to go around and look at different industry sectors and then refine your search that way. Right. And then finally on the homepage, just real quick, just wanted to show you the downloads that we've had so far, 2.6 million downloads. And then of course, with the views together is 4.5 million. But then we also have a little bit of statistics down here around and analytics around the repository itself and how things are trending. One of the things I'd really like to show you is some of the things that we've been doing in partnership, as Amanda had alluded to earlier, like with the New Hampshire Tech Alliance. So we've got some products and services. So if you're looking to partner with us and create a, for example, a portal, we've put this together for the New Hampshire Tech Alliance and put together OER from this repository around areas that would the needs that they had up in New Hampshire. So obviously, being the Tech Alliance, we're focusing on technology areas and things like that, and then just put together these things, customize it for them around the areas that they were looking for support and help in. Just a place for their members to get quick access to the content around the industry sector in which they're functioning. We also have had for primary school, or I should say secondary schools, for high school teachers and things like that. So that we've got some, one of our members on our team put together this. She came out of K-12 and put together this for high schools in the Colorado area to help them with resources. Again, as everybody had to pivot really quick to get online, a lot of schools went online when the COVID happened with stay-at-home orders and things like that. So put together some teaching online resources, resources for learners to help them and all that great stuff. So again, what do you do when something like this happens? There are resources out there, and these are available to help you, and as well as to be able to help you to assess student learning while you're separated. So how would you do that? One of the neat things that we've seen is by doing simulations or projects, and students can actually send in videos or pictures. And so this was a project, obviously this was back a while back, but you can still see, like, students can show their work and things from an exposition, an exhibit that they did, and things like that, and just all the different lessons that they learned and that great learning material there. Another great feature that we have, and I'll take you back to the homepage of Skills Commons, just to show you kind of how I got to these areas, is through the showcases. And so what you can do is, go through, either just look at apprenticeships. We got lots of material in different industry sectors around apprenticeships. And again, you can, look and see what you're looking for, find things to help you in specific industries. If there's something here that that's not listed that you would be interested, feel free to reach out to us at support@skillscommons.org, and we'll get in touch with you. You can also look at the Affordable Learning Solutions Showcase. There's lots of great materials and opportunities there. Go into the career and technical education. Again, here's the COVID-19 quick links there, as well as some open courseware for CTE, and then links to the Blackboard open courseware, over 300 courses that we have. And one of them is listed on the slide presentation. So if I click this, I would go right in here to our Skills Commons Blackboard, and you'll see that the top two here, the standard precautions e-learning simulation and the pathogens and antibacterial resistance, these are actually courses, simulations that you can go into and view. So how would you do that? We have instructions right here, how you can access these courses, a free account for you to be able to get in, but you have to have an account. It's part of the Blackboard open learning system. So you can click the link once you're enrolled. You can log in. So I've already logged in. So I was going to share this one with you. So I've launched the presentation. Why don't I go this? Why don't I go ahead and manage the course and let you see what it actually looks like? So you get kind of an announcement page and then an overview of what the course is. And then I think I need to stop share here because I went ahead and started the simulation. So it opened up in a new window. And so I'll show you what that window looks like here. So you can kind of see what these simulations look like. So, so here's the simulation, and you get in here and you see a menu. So if you wanted to just kind of jump around and get into one of the simulations, you can skip around and jump in. And then again, these are full audio. So I have the audio turned off right now, but you'll be able to hear the audio as you go forward. But here we're talking about, personal protective equipment, which is a big deal right now, right? And so, so that's just, again, just a sample for you to see what's in Skills Commons. And then also the pathogens course. So let me go back and share the screen. Yeah, back here. And so back on this screen, If I go into the pathogens course, let's go back to here, just to show you again how we get into the courses from our Skills Commons page on Blackboard Open Ed. So again, I click that, and then I can go in and manage, look at the course. Again, the same type of thing, and then you click the content. So I'll stop to share there so you can just real quick see what that, because this one is a little different as far as the format looks like. So you should be able to see that. So this one is done, pathogens and antibacterial resistance. Again, the way this one's laid out, you can, skip around and jump into different things. I thought this one was interesting with all the things going on with nursing homes. Just looking in, at some of the pathogens and things like that, the resistance. But you could just see the good quality of content that was in here. And then something else I wanted to mention was all the content in Skills Commons had to be reviewed by a subject matter expert within the industry. So you have that confidence as well, knowing that it's been reviewed by a subject matter expert in the field. Again, you can just skip around, you look at these different areas and sections and what you want to use. Again, this is a great material that possibly you might want to like supplement your course with. Again, you don't have to create this. You can just go ahead and use it as is if you wanted to. So, so I just wanted to make you guys aware of that as well. Go back to sharing my regular screen, and we'll get back to some of the other content within Skills Commons, and just how to look for material within Skills Commons. Again, we have a lot of these great shortcuts that are available for you. A lot of stuff in developmental education available, full online courses that you can look at. You can just reuse as they are. Here's some on developmental math and math pre-algebra and algebra 1. We have, preview to the course, download the materials if you want to from Skills Commons, and modify and do all that great stuff with it. But here you can see, again, you can just have full access to the course. So I know this is kind of just a brief overview of what's in Skills Commons, but we just wanted to make sure that you were aware of all the materials and just in different sectors and ways to reuse the content in Skills Commons. If I could just really quick, I know we're running short on time, but just under the material type, if you wanted to browse by material type, you can see the different types here. So for example, if I want to look at an online course, maybe you're looking for online courses, and just to show you what this aspect window on the left will be able to reveal. So if you wanted to just be able to have previews to the courses, you can do a sort that way, and it'll produce a list of how many that we have previews for. And then also, if you wanted to refine your search by the industry sector, you can do that. Or again, if you wanted to go by material type, credential types, and then institutions. So this aspect window over on this left, this gray window is really great to help you kind of, refine a search if you want to. And of course, we also have the advanced search. And here we, I think one of the neat things about this area is the quality assessment organizations. We were able to work with different editorial boards in healthcare, people that work in that industry field. The Ohio Manufacturers Association did some peer reviews for us, and then our own editorial board. And then we also have this Women in Employment. So if you wanted to, find just the stuff that was in addition to the subject matter expert review that was accomplished under the TAG program, this is a kind of a secondary editorial review that industry leaders went through and picked out some of the best of the best. So I'm going to stop there, Louis and everyone, and see if there's anything else you want me to share. But for now, I think that's kind of a good overview, and we can always follow up with folks later if they've got questions. Again, support@skillscommons.org. Thank you.
So thank you so much, Rick and Sam and Luis. And just to sort of put this all together, wrap it all up for everybody, OERs can very much greatly increase and benefit CTE programs. They can help CTE teachers prepare course materials, and Skills Commons is an excellent resource when we are searching for OERs, particularly OERs related, as Rick showed us, to the needs of CTE educators. So when we think about CTE teachers, and as everyone has mentioned, COVID-19, and we really think about how do we help CTE teachers plan for barriers that they might be experienced, whether that is in remote learning, hybrid learning, or in-person learning. There are resources, as Rick shared with us, on Skills Commons that educators can download, access, that can really help them think about how to plan for those barriers, especially useful for CTE teachers when we consider that many of them did not have the same pedagogical training or background as our core teachers, since so many CTE teachers come from industry. So really this is about thinking how OERs can benefit CTE teachers. One way is to help CTE teachers when they think about barriers and how they can plan for those barriers. And as Luis said earlier, OERs offer us multiple means of taking in the learning, multiple means of visualizing the learning. So they could a teacher could do a demonstration in class and then have access to a video through the OERs in Skills Commons. And then what's great is Rick also showed us this resource that you see on the right. CTE teachers need a way to really make sure that the learning stays relevant. When we're working in the classroom, we can do that easily. But when we think about COVID-19, when we think about going into hybrid environments, we really need some resources that can make sure that we keep that learning relevant. And I love that example that Rick showed us, and this one you see on the right, a relevant project. And this is an example of a way to keep it relevant, having students do projects at home, send in photos, maybe create a step-by-step how-to visual that they can share with their other classmates, with their peers, with students in lower levels of the CTE course. So one of the goals when we think about CTE and how to use OERs is to help teachers keep the learning relevant, and then using Skills Commons as a resource to doing that. And then lastly, when we think about UDL and OERs and CTE, one of the important aspects is to keep a focus on the learning goal. And Rick did a great job of showing us how some of these where some of these health science resources exist within Skills Commons. And UDL reminds us to focus on the learning goal. And then what we can do is if we're, again, in that hybrid learning environment or that remote learning environment, we can offer students a way to achieve the learning goal, but with a variety of access points. So, maybe one student is going to achieve that learning goal by accessing the resources in Skills Commons. Another is going to watch a video that the teacher makes. So really helping support the learning goals of the CTE educators by pairing UDL and OERs together. Okay, this is actually Luis's quote from Maya Angelou, and I think it's just really fantastic. Do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better. And I think this is a great reminder just to all of us, and Luis, I will let you speak to this too, just a great reminder that we've thrown a lot of resources at folks, we've given them a lot of examples, and it's just important for us to take a deep breath, absorb what you can from this, and apply even a small piece of this for your learning environment, or to help support your CTE instructors to apply a small piece of this learning will have a great impact on our students. And Luis, maybe you want to echo that or weigh in as well.
I would just say that in terms of how we want to support our students to become expert learners is really building that growth mindset of continuous improvement. And so we want to model that among ourselves as well. We want to make sure that we're always growing and getting better in our understanding of resources and our understanding of accessibility, universal design for learning, so that we become better CTE teachers and also model that growth mindset for our learners. So that's why I thought that this quote was really appropriate. It's all about taking one small thing, applying it, and learning from it, and then improving what you do and the way that you teach. So with that, we're going to wrap things up. by sharing our contact information. There will also be a handout that has a number of these key points from the presentation and all of the resources that we share. So you'll get access to all of the links. But any final thoughts from Sam or Rick or Amanda? Other than that, we'll just say thank you so much for watching this presentation, and you can reach out to any of us if you have questions or feedback.